Hello and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. Today I'm going to be doing my second video on the game Armageddon War as part of Flying Pig February, where I'm looking at the games of Flying Pig Games. This is designed by Greg Porter, and it's a Mark Walker game, and we're playing the expansion this time called Burning Lands, which adds Syria, no, I'm sorry, not Syria, Jordan and Hezbollah to the forces that were in the base game. And we'll be playing scenario 4, and I'll get into the scenario here in a moment. So there's a previous video, obviously, this being the second. So the first video was kind of an introduction. I tried to kind of at least somewhat explain how the game works, the mechanics, etc., so that you guys would have a better idea of how it all works. There are also other videos that do a really good job of showing the mechanics and kind of explaining things and so on and so forth. So I won't go into too deep about the mechanics, except to mention how things that weren't in the first video would work, because this one has a few new wrinkles in addition to the new map and the new forces that are involved, of which there's actually only one. We're not going to see Jordan in this scenario, but we will see Hezbollah. So, without further ado, I will get us started by talking about the particular scenario we will be playing. So, as I mentioned, we're playing scenario number 4, which is called Border War. This is one of the 2 scenarios in this expansion that were actually designed by Mark Walker. And this one says, October 30th, 2028, a Hezbollah battalion attacked an Israeli settlement on the West Bank, killing numerous civilians. When the IDF responded, Hezbollah ran. The Israelis have been on their tail for most of the morning. The Hezbollah believes the IDF will give up when the Hezbollah crosses into Jordan. Unfortunately for the Hezbollah, they are wrong. Fortunately for the Hezbollah, a Russian task force sent to guard Jordanian border, the Jordanian border, I guess, agrees with the Hezbollah. So we are featuring Israel, which has 3 different formations here: SAR, Palsar, and Gideon. The Russian Federation with Serduyakov and the 696th Rifle, and Hezbollah with the Al-Masawi formation of 8 units. So special scenario rules. All the dense wood hexes are considered light woods. Hezbollah units may not use the road movement rate or flank movement rate. I didn't really talk about flank movement rate in the first video, so we may talk about that when it comes to the Israelis, who probably will use it. The Russians may as well, we'll see. Hezbollah units may only move in hexes that have roads, so they're going to stick to the roads because they're trying to hightail it out. Hezbollah units may not end movement in hexes with, nor combine fire with Russian Federation units. Hezbollah units exit the scenario when they reach hex K6. Simply remove the Hezbollah unit from the board. Russian units may voluntarily downgrade their dice number and type when attacking, and you may wonder why they would do such a thing. Here under the victory conditions, let me slide this up a little bit. It says the Russian player gets 3 points per Hezbollah unit that exits the map. The Russians lose 1 point. Here's the key part. They lose 1 point for each Israeli unit they eliminate. That is why they would consider downgrading their dice number and dice quality when attacking. The Russians win if they accumulate 6 or more victory points. Any other result is an Israeli victory. So basically, if 2 Hezbollah units make it to K6 and get off the map, the Russians will have enough victory points to win, assuming they don't kill any Israelis, which would cost them victory points. So yeah, and anything other than that, if it's not a Russian victory, then it's an Israeli victory. There's some tactical notes which are attached to all the scenarios in the game, both the base game and here in the expansion. So that's pretty good. Tells you that we have a couple of good setup spots for Russian vehicles and infantry, and that it takes the Hezbollah units 5 or 6 activations to get off the map, and they should get between 6 and 8 over the course of the scenario. This is a 30 activation scenario. So again, if you didn't watch the first video, this game does not use turns per se. It uses activations, and it's a chit pull activation. You pull a chit, that unit is activated. There's a track on the board, and basically once the cup is empty, it gets refilled except for the most recent activation. So you get a little Murphy's Law, fortunes of war kind of scenario there. But in general, you use activations. We get to 30 activations. The scenario is over. If the Russians have achieved 6 or more victory points, at that point they win. If not, the Israelis win. Pretty straightforward. So all the Israeli player needs to do to win essentially is slow down Hezbollah or kill them. But slowing them down would even be good enough if they get through all 30 activations. So this is going to be an interesting one because the Russians obviously will have some rules of engagement to deal with as far as not trying to kill the Israelis, maybe try to shake them up, pin them, do things like that, but not eliminate them. Because if they eliminate them, they lose a victory point. So without any further ado, we are going to get underway. Okay, so before we actually start pulling chits and activating formations here, we should talk about the layout. So here's our Hezbollah, Al-Masawi, hightailing it on the road out of Israel and into Jordan, or out of the West Bank and into Jordan. Here are our Russian forces on the border, basically T. The setup rule said row T and west. So this is row T here. Whoops, not what I meant to do there. So they have, basically they have a bunch of infantry. Well, I shouldn't say that. They've got several infantry. I think they have 4 infantry. They have, actually they have 3 infantry. They have 3 infantry. They have an armada. They have 2 BMPTs. They have a couple of Cornet missiles. They have 1 Igla, and that will be important. I'll explain why in a moment. And 3 BMP-3Ms and 3 Concours. So we've kind of set up like a channel here for my Russian deployment where the Hezbollah will come along the road and then they'll tail off on this road because they have to get to K6, which is actually off map, but it's over here. So it's basically this direction. Put it this way, this is N6 right here. So you go M, L, K, obviously. So 3 hexes west of there. I'll move the camera up closer as we get closer to that. But for now, I'm leaving it as is. Just because I like this particular view, you can see basically all the units that are in play at the moment. You might notice there are no Israeli units on the map except for this sniper here. So the sniper's technically hidden, and you use hidden markers and so on, and the opponent can try to guess where he is, and then when he fires, basically. But in this case, because I'm playing solo, I know where he is. So what I'll do is I'll roll. Every time he takes an action, I'll roll a die. And we'll use that to determine whether or not he's detected. So all our Israeli forces are off the map. They have SAR, which has 2 formation chits. So 2 chances to activate. They've got 4 Makava tanks and a Predator drone. So that's the purpose of the Igla, is to handle that Predator drone. Then the Palsar Recon has 3 units. They are 2 Humvees and the sniper. So the sniper is part of that. And the Humvees are both equipped with ITOW, so the improved tow missile. And Gideon has 6 units. That is, they get 1 formation, as does Palsar for activation. They get 3 infantry squads. 3 Namer 2s. Actually, I only have 2 Namer 2 counters for some reason. And I did buy this, or acquire this secondhand, so it's possible that counter just got lost. But I'm using another counter to denote that one, and I'll just I'll know in my head that it's a Namer, and I'll use the Namer ratings when we do stuff with it. They get 2 Negev NG7s, and they also get an infantry ITOW. So that's the layout, and we'll get underway by drawing our first chit for activation here. Shake it up real good. Let's see what we pull out. And we get Gideon. So it goes on the track down here. Here's That's 5, so I'm putting it on 1, or that was 4 actually. 3, 2, 1. It's just off the shot. Not a big deal because the Israelis are going to enter up here, so I wanted to be able to have that there without having to widen the shot so much that all the counters are tiny. So Gideon enters. There are 3 hexes here, so at most we can enter 6 units. Gideon has 6 units, but they have APCs, so I'm going to place those out. I'll do that off camera, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about what we do next. Okay, so I pulled in Gideon. They have 3 namers. I'm using one Exerat 2 to act as a namer, but it's going to be a namer 2, essentially. So that's what ratings it'll get. So what we're going to do is we're on the road here, and here's our prey, so to speak. So on the road, movement's only half a point, right? So we can go 1, then we go through here, which adds 1. Actually, no, it doesn't. I'm sorry. So it's 1, 2 to get here. So we can go in there and we'll dismount our infantry, and we'll go here, dismount our infantry, and then we're both going to close assault, essentially, because it costs half your movement to do that. So we need 3 left over, right? So he has 6. If we go here, half, 1, 1.5, stop here, drop them off. That's 4.5, 5 to get in here. As for the infantry itself, it has a movement of 3, so it would have 1 left, which is enough to get in here. So that's what we're going to do. And this one has a light machine gun as well. So we're going to do a close assault right off the bat because we were lucky enough to draw an Israeli activation first. So again, we're going to go half, 1, 1.5, dismount. So we're going to put our infantry on top of the APC, and we're going to close assault this hex. So it's a little risky, but I'm confident that our advantage will, or I should say our advantage from the Israeli standpoint, because I'm playing both sides, is enough to carry this through. So talking about support units, so let's just take a look here. So here's our infantry. It's got a primary firepower of, it's red. It's a red 3, which means infantry, right? Now, the support weapon also has the same color, so it adds to this, and it's not something you would use separately. Like if this was an anti-tank weapon, you would use it separately. So it would be an either-or situation. This is a plus situation. So they're going to have a 4. 3 plus 1 is 4. Plus the Gideon, the Axerat is actually a namer, and the namer has a firepower of 3. So, and it's also red. So that gives them a total of 7, and the defenders have a total of 4. And the defense for both would be 2, so you would subtract that from the 7, and that would give the Israelis 5 dice. And on the flip side, the attackers, the Al-Masawi infantry both have attack factors of 2, and they're both red, so that's 4. And then you have -1, and the Gideon, it's a 3, so that's 4, but it's a different color, which impacts how many hits they can get on it as well. So essentially, I think it's going to be 5 dice for the Israelis and 2 for the Hezbollah. Okay, so to calculate the combat here, so we have our lead units, and let's have our APC be the lead unit for the attacker, and the infantry, they don't have a choice. So the terrain is clear for them and light urban for the Israelis. So that would normally give you a +1 if they were both infantry, but for a tracked vehicle like the Namer, even though this is an Axeret, it's actually a Namer, as I mentioned earlier. So you take actually, you know what? Yeah, their attack rating is actually a 3. I know it says Here, let's do this just to make this easy. So this is the namer. It's got an attack of 3, and they have a defense of 1. Their lead unit has a defense of 1. So that's 2 dice. It gets an additional die because the infantry is joining in. So that's 3 dice. And they get a +1 die quality because this is red tech and they're black tech. So we're gonna, right now we're at 3, and 2 of them become green because of the envelop retreat, but then one of the green actually gets bumped back to black because of the tech difference. Now on the other side, you have a 2 attacking a 4, but they always get 1 die. So they get 1 die, but they also take a -2 die quality because of their strategy. So they get 1 green. So that's how we're going to roll this. And it's considered simultaneous, but I'll roll the attacker first. And we got 5 hits. 5 hits, and because it's all infantry fire, 5 hits against both of these units. So we know that we got 5 hits on that side. So let's just put these here so we know, and then we'll roll the green die, and they get 1 hit. So 5 hits to 1 hit. Now how do you apply the damage? Okay, so let's move these out just to make things a little easier to see here. So 5 hits, okay? So you apply them evenly. But first of all, both lead units will get action. So both lead units are going to get 1 of these. So he's going to have 1, and he's going to have 1. Okay, that's just to start with. Now we start applying hits. So with 5 hits to these guys, you would get 3 and 2, depending on how you want to align it. So if you do it this way, you get 3, and they also have 3. So I'm just going to put both of them with a 3 underneath because they're both shaken. Because they started fine, and we had 5 hits, plus the 1 to the lead unit makes 6, so 3 and 3, they're both shaken. Now on their side, they had 1 for the action, and we can make this, flip it to pinned. Whoops, that's not pinned. This is pinned. They did not succeed in killing these guys, so we'll remove that, and they have to retreat because of that. So I'm going to turn this up and point it up so that we know it only applies to the bottom unit. And then these guys are fine. So that's how that works. Okay, so one additional change here is they get an action step as well because they were part of the attack. But only, in theory, only the lead defender would get would take an action step, but because they had 5 hits, both of them ended up at -3. So you can see the -2 pointing up, that's for the APC, and the 1 pointing this way is for the infantry unit. So that is how close combat works. So that finishes that round, and we would move on to, well, not that round, but that finishes that unit, and we move on to our other units. So we have this other Gideon here who can go half, 1, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. And we'll stop here. And we will attack. Now in theory, these guys here have line of sight through the spine right there. They could take opportunity fire. It's a little risky, only because, you know, I may attack them afterwards if they don't do any damage, and it's going to be hard for them to do damage here. It's got a 3 defense, and because of the difference in fire and armor, they need 2 hits for one. They need 2 strikes for 1 hit. So it would only take 1 hit to give them an action, and then they wouldn't be able to attack. On the other hand, that you could then hold it and wait, and they'll attack, and then you counterfire. So again, it's like 6 of one, half a dozen of another, kind of. So I think we'll do the op fire because we have 2. It's going to be 0, but we can use this guy to get 1 die. So we're going to get 1 die, and it's going to be what quality? So let's figure out the dice quality for this. So they're in here, which is clear terrain. So clear terrain gives you no dice quality modifiers. If it's counterfire, see, counterfire would get you, no, that gets for the attacker. So let me think about this. There's also a tech difference. Yeah, they're not going to do it. They're going to end up with nothing, basically. Because there are no 2-strike sides on the green die. There are no 2-strike sides. So they wouldn't be able to do any damage. So hard pass, and we move on. They are going to fire at them, however. So we'll just fire at the top unit. Okay, so it's 2 attacking 1, which isn't great. So it's only 1 die. We get a dice qualify hit because we moved first, and it was more than, was it more than half? We were here, so 1, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. That is more than half. So you take a -2 DQ on that. So we'd go down to green, and then we get 1 back. So it's basically it's 1 green die. Which, oh wait, that's actually, their firepower is actually a 3. I keep doing that. This is actually a namer. So the namer has a 3. So it's 2 dice. Both would get knocked down to a green by the -2 for the movement. 1 would get bumped back to black because of the tech difference. We have a green and a black. Now they can counterfire if they wish, but again, it's dicey because they can't hurt that armor. And they would actually add a die. They would actually add a DQ to me by poking their heads out. So they're going to hold because they can't retreat. They're clogged here. They can't go off the road. So they get 2 hits. So 2 strikes makes 2 hits because it's red on red. So that's 1 strike equals a hit. So they're going to take 2 hits. So the top guy is going to be pinned. So we'll put him as pinned, and then this guy, I'll have to remember, is nothing. So I'll just set him off to the side there like that. Or what I'll do is I'll turn this guy up like that, and he's pinned, and he is not. So there you have that. Now we'll move our final unit up here, and he'll go 1, 2, 3, and stop. And then we will, let's dismount. So we're going to dismount. So we are dismounting. And we will fire. And again, this is actually a namer, so it's got a 3. And a 4 on defense. But we will fire because he used his full movement and they used half their movement. So we'll fire with the Gideon as the primary. So it's 3 minus 1 is 2. So we're going to start with 2 dice. And again, we take the penalty, so they're 2 green at the moment. Then we would get a +1 die from the namer. And so that's what they're attacking with. And again, they can fire back, and this time they will. So it's 1, 2, 3 is the distance. Oh wait, they would lose for long distance as well. Yeah, so long distance actually gives you a -2 DQ. So all 3 of the attack dice are going to be green. They'll counterfire. So it's 2 minus 1 is 1. So they have the possibility of making, oh, that gives us an extra die though, but that die would also be green. So it's 4 green die they are counter-firing. They can have one hit. So we get 2 strikes, no counter strikes. 2 strikes means 2 hits, so both these guys are now pinned. Both these guys are pinned, and that will be the end of this activation, and we'll move on to pull our next chits out. And that will keep us moving. Okay, so we're going to do activation number 2 here. And I slid the camera down a little bit because, you know, Gideon's activation is done. So we're going to move on, and we get Al-Masawi. So Al-Masawi now, we'll put that on the 2 here. They obviously have some units they can move, which is ideal for them. So they can go, you know, they've got these 2 guys right here. Now these 2, they're going to recover a little bit. So this guy will recover. Now both of these are pinned, so they're going to recover to active. And they can't do better than that because they are definitely in the line of sight of Israelis. They don't have any defensible terrain. They're on a road in the open. These guys will go to pinned. Let's see if I can find one. There we go. All right. Both these guys are pinned. So they go to pinned. Same thing. They can't bump up to anything else. So they're just stuck there. All right. So these guys here, we're going to activate them and move them. They both have a movement of 3. So we're just going to move them together. We'll do 1. Well, yeah. I think they, if I remember correctly, this one of the special rules was, yes, they cannot use the road movement rate. So normally this is just a half. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3. So they're here. They get a action marker. These guys will go 1, 2, 3 as well. Also get an action marker. And that's really all they can do. They're not interested in fighting. They're not interested in anything except getting their butts to safety. So that's going to end activation 2. We'll go to 3 here. The Russians, 696th rifle. All right, 696th rifle. So here's 696th rifle. They have here, over here, over here, over here. I don't know that they really have a whole lot they want to do. We kind of set them up so that they would be in position to support things as it moved into this channel here between the ridges and around the bend, right? So in theory, they could move up and attack the Israelis. But here's the thing, right? We know, well, they basically have two. They have a goal and they have a constraint. The goal, of course, is to let these guys or support these guys in getting the hell out of Dodge, getting off map. That's how they score victory points. But if they fight the Israelis and actually eliminate them, then they're going to actually end up losing victory points. So it's kind of a tough situation because obviously they can move. Now they have a Conquerors, which if they move, they can't use it. So that's a little bit of a problem, right? But this guy, well, I mean, he's... here's the thing. These are light woods. Light woods, according to our trusty player aid card here. Light woods block line of sight. So they would literally have to move through the woods to get here to attack this guy. And they also, for light woods, for movement cost would be 2. So it would be 2, 4. Their movement is 6. That's more than half. So they're going to take a hit on dice quality just for doing that. They won't be able to use their Conquers, which is a good weapon to use against a vehicle, which is what these guys are riding in a vehicle. So to me, the bottom line is they probably aren't going to do anything here. Now, this guy could theoretically move up and you know, maybe take up a position where he has a straight shot down the road. Maybe we do that. But this is rough terrain down here. This is rough. And again, if we look at rough, here's rough. That's an infantry, so it would be 2. So again, he's only got a movement of 3, so he can move 1. So I mean, I guess we can do that. We'll move him over here. We'll give him an action. The rest of these guys, though, I think we're going to leave alone. This guy's got the Igla rocket. The Predator's not on site yet, so we don't need to worry about moving him just yet. Then we have our we have a unit over here, which I purposely put here. This is like the last line of defense to help, you know, if the action makes it around this bend here, gets through this gauntlet, then this guy is basically our last line of defense in his BMP here, BMP-3M, not attached to a unit. I didn't actually stack these guys together because I didn't think they would need to move all that much. So I'm trying to explain my tactical strategy, I guess, for the Russians. I'm using this basically as a gun platform instead of using it as a transport because I don't really see that we need to move the infantry around a whole lot. You know, I have these guys here so that when the Israelis come around the bend, we have firing lanes, right? Same thing here. They come around the bend, and this is where the 696 is really going to make hay, in theory, right? Support these guys here. Then you got these guys here, and then finally this guy. So, you know, we've got the Serduyakov here to kind of... now, these guys, again, this is a tough situation. This guy is, these two are probably, when they get activated, I'm probably going to move them up here because this is rough. These are vehicles. They can't enter it. So they're going to move here. This guy will probably stay here because he's got nice lane of fire right here. And he can also fire into this hex. So, because it's across the hex side. So even though rough does block line of sight, the only things that don't block line of sight here are clear, cultivated, soft sand, and then marsh and river and fences. That's it. Everything else blocks line of sight. The thing with this map 3, the Burning Sands map, is its lines of sight are short because of all this rough trees, all kinds of stuff. This is a totally different map from maps 1 and 2 in the base game, which are definitely more open and what you would expect in, you know, desert terrain, essentially. So that's going to end the 696th activation. Now let's see if we can pull something else out of here. And we get SAR. So another Israeli. We'll drop that down there. And again, you know, you don't want to be last. And there's a lot of formations to activate here. Israel has 4. The Russians have 3. And Al-Masawi has 2. So that's what? 3, 5, 9. So 9, we're going to fill the whole track, basically, before we flip over to the next go-round. And you don't want to be the last chair here because you get skipped, essentially. It's one of the cool things about the system, in my opinion. So we're activating SAR. So I'm going to actually pause here, slide the camera up so that we can see their entry points, which are up here and slightly off map at the moment. Okay, so I have our SAR, and they come with their Predator drone. So so SAR consists of basically, this is our armor. We've got 4 Merkava 4M tanks. So we'll do 2 here, 2 here, and I guess I'll just put the Predator at the top. The Predator has great range, obviously. So we should probably talk about how drones work, since we didn't use it in the first video, and obviously we are using it now, so we should probably talk about how drones work. So just looking at the rule book here, let me actually pick this up. So there we go. So you can see it's got a blue shield. It's got an A after its movement for air, and a range of 16, which is really far, as you might suspect. Then you have its firepower. It is a specialized firepower against armor, and it has a range of 12 in a blue circle. So that basically just means that it doesn't have extended range or anything, and it can fire out to 12. So it doesn't get any bonuses for close range or long range. Can't do long range, and basically no bonus for short range. So still, it's a very powerful weapon. It's got black for technology, so it's not considered advanced. But it's also vulnerable to any air weapon, such as the Igla rocket that one of the 696th Rifle Squads has, which is down here. And if we look at this has a range of 12 as well. Range of 12 as well. An attack of 2, and it's blue, obviously, because it's designed to attack aircraft. All right, so with that being said, let's see what we can do with our Predator. So first thing I would do as the Israeli player is figure out just how close to this guy I can get. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So basically, he's going to get an opportunity fire as soon as we move into the battlefield area. Which kind of makes me think we should almost go in there and try and knock this guy out right away. Like mission 1 should be knock him out and take him off the board, because if we kill this guy, the rocket goes away too, right? The problem is that's designed to kill armor, so it's going to take multiple strikes to actually hit this guy. So that's going to be a bit of a challenge, but they are going to obviously take a shot, and they have a range of 12. And, so it's only a 2 firepower, but the drone only has an armor of 1. So it's going to be 1 die, but 1 strike on an air unit will make it go away. If it gets to, so it says air units generally represent 1 vehicle and have only 1 damage step. Anything causing a damage step eliminates the unit. Air units that still have an action counter on them after their morale step are removed from play. If you can go 250 kilometers per hour and are demoralized, you do not hang around. Makes sense to me. Whether or not the unit can return to play is dependent on the scenario. It didn't say anything to that effect in the scenario setup, so I'm assuming that once the drone is bugged out, it stays bugged out and does not come back. So the good thing is with it being only a 2 attack against a 1, it's 1 die. Probably you get a reasonable chance that you're not going to end up with shaken status. So, I think in general we'll be able to hopefully do something there. We don't have command and logistics in this scenario, so all right, enough kind of not playing. Let's get to some action. So I know I talked about kind of not. Attacking these guys. Ideally, we would, but it's going to be trying to determine what I should do here as far as that goes, because these guys, once they get around the bend here, they can go 1, 2, 3. Now K6, as I mentioned, is all the way over here. It's off board. The closest to this is M6, so you have L and K. It's two hexes further off the map. I can move the camera closer, obviously. I just like to have the dice tower in the shot. It's just an aesthetic thing for me. So we will have our Predator drone act first, and then I'll move my tanks into action, and we'll do something with those guys as well. Okay, here's the tough thing about this. Okay, so let's look at our Predator drone counter again. I don't think we actually got into this in the first video, but you see the color's gold, and the secondary, the starburst, is also gold. This is specialized armor. Okay, so if you attack infantry with this, because neither the primary nor secondary match the defense color of our red shield here on the infantry, it takes 3 strikes to make 1 hit. So thinking this through, okay, the firepower is an 8. So firepower of 8 minus 1 is 7. So that's 7 die, but the max you can have is 6. So we're going to roll 6 dice. Now, 6 dice will give you, in theory, the potential to have a whole lot of hits if they're black, which they would be, because we're going to have clear line of sight and all that stuff. So it would be 6. They don't even have to move off this hex to fire at like these guys, or these guys probably. I'm sure they're within 12 hexes. So in theory, I could try it and hope for the best, or I could try to take out one of these Russian armored units, any of the vehicles. They've got, APCs and a tank out here, so I could attempt to do something to them. But to me, honestly, the fight here isn't so much with the Russians as it is with these guys, right? We want to knock Hezbollah out. We want to keep them from getting off map. So I'm actually going to try this Predator attack against the infantry, and let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this would be the extent of my movement. If I can hit this guy and pin him, then he'd only recover to the action step, and that would kind of jam them up and hold them, right? We're channeling everything down this road. These units can't leave the road. So if I can stick somebody here as a roadblock, then hey, it makes them easier to kill. So that's what I'm going to do, even though it's going to be hard for me to get a lot of hits with my drone here. So he's not even moving. He's just going to fire. His range is 12. He's got 8. Minus 1, as I mentioned, is 7. The max you can get is 6. They're all going to be black because there's no move and fire penalty or anything for a drone. So they should all be black. And let me just confirm that to make sure that I'm rolling the correct dice quality here. All right, so they're on a road, right? So in theory, I'm thinking we get a +1 DQ. So that would be 1 red die, basically, in this case. So because all 3 of these, they're on the road. So in theory, when you're on a road, you have limited cover because of the road, right? The road is going through. It's also clear terrain. It's not like there's any place to hide. So I'm going to give 1 black die. And if this is wrong, because the rules don't really say anything about how air unit fire gets adjusted. So I'm going to roll 5 black, 1 red. They can't counterfire. They don't have any anti-air weapons. This guy can't op fire because the drone is out of range. So we're going to roll here. And so we only got 4 strikes. So 4 strikes is going to get basically 1 hit. So 1 hit, though, does what we needed it to do. It makes them pinned. Whoops, that's shaking. I need a pinned. Here we go. So 1 pinned, and that's only on 1 unit. So I'm going to put it on top of the unit that's not pinned. And we'll put an action on the other guy. Because again, you can only attack 1 unit, so we were attacking the top guy. But it did what we wanted it to do. So the top guy, he's going to get loose and be able to move again when they reactivate. The other guy, he's only going to recover back to action, and he's going to be stuck and unable to move, which means these guys can't move, which means if this guy he recovers and moves up, he can only move up to here. He'd only be able to move up to there anyway. But basically, our traffic jam is situated. So now let's move our tanks. Now the tanks are a little bit, again, the terrain here is not all that friendly here for moving stuff. So we're just going to move our tanks up. So we get 1. Now they can go through forest. So we'll go, that's 1, because it's road. Half, 1, 2, 4, because we're going into light woods. And that is a movement of cost of 2. And then 6. So they're there. We'll move these guys up to here. And that's it. And I'm going to put action markers under both to indicate that they moved. Nobody's firing. We'll just move and stop. So they're there and they're there. And that's going to end that activation. And we'll now move on to activation number 5. Okay, moving on to activation number 5. I see some Russians bouncing around in there. see what we get here. Oh, we got the another Israeli. So this actually works out pretty well for the Israelis here as Palsar gets selected. So we'll drop that on here. Okay, so I've placed Palsar out. And what we're going to do here is it's 2 Humvees. Each is equipped with an ITOW missile, which you cannot fire after moving. You have to be stationary and fire. But they do have a gun. They mount a gun, so they have a 2 firepower against infantry. So what we will do is we will move one of them, 1, 2, and they have an 11 movement factor. So then that way we can set this up, right? So he's moving there, and at the same time, this one's going half, 1, 2, 3, 4, stops. And so we're going to have both of these fire together. So we'll get a flanking fire, and we'll get an additional bonus as well. So here's how this works. We're attacking this one right here. It's 2 minus 1, so it's 1 die. Okay, it's 1 die. But because we're flanking and we are also firing from a secondary location, we'll get some bonuses as well. Okay, so just thinking this through again, right? This guy started here, so this is a half, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then cultivated for wheeled costs 2. So that would be 5, 6. Okay, now 6 is more than half, which would cost us 1 DQ. But here would be close range, which gives us plus 2 DQ. So we're going to take that. Okay, so this will be the primary and this will be the secondary. It really doesn't matter except for range purposes. So he's at normal range. He's at close range. So that's a plus 2. And then we get a minus 2. Actually, they wash. It's a wash. So, yeah, we'll go with the original plan. He'll stick here, which is less than half. So that's a minus 1 DQ. That's a minus 1 DQ. We get 3 dice. So we start with 3 black. 2 of them get downgraded to green because of the minus 1 DQ for the moving fire. And the dice number, we get a plus 1 for flanking and a plus 1 for combined fire. So 3 dice, 2 of them are green. They can counterfire if they wish to. With the minus 2, it's not going to do them any good because they would end up at 0 because their firepower is 2. Actually, yeah, it's still going to be 0. 2 minus, and it's armored. Yeah, there's no point. They're not going to get any damage. So we're going to roll our one black, 2 green, and we got 1 hit. So 1 hit. So one of these guys is going to go to shaken. So we'll put this here like this, and this guy will be shaken, and his buddy will just be pinned. So we have 1 pinned, 1 shaken there, and that ends Palsar's activation. So we'll go on to activation number 6. Now all the Israelis have moved, so we should have an Al-Masawi and some Russians in here. And we get a Russian, and it is the 696th rifle, because they had 2. So that's going to go there. And again, with the 696th rifle, we don't really have a shot right now unless he moves. And this is a vehicle which can't do rough, so he'd have to move here. And then here. And so maybe we do that because... well, actually, this guy gets recovered. That's the first thing to do. He recovers his action. And I think I'm going to move him here, and we'll give him his action back. because he moved. And then now he's got a shot straight up the road. This guy will move up. So this is one of the BMP-3s, which doesn't have an infantry attached to it because I deployed the infantry. And I'm using this basically as a gun platform. So we're going to move this guy. Well, I don't know, because we could have, actually we can't have, well, did I forget to put action markers? I did. These guys both did move and fire. So I'm forgetting things here. This also gets one. And I don't think I put one on our namer here also. Oh, shoot. Butterfingers. So we have... now I'm confused what we have here. All right, give me a second to reset this. Okay, all straightened out. Okay, so we're all good again. So here's the thing. Now, if we move, we can move because they can't take, there's nobody who can take an op fire shot at us. Everybody's got an action. So we're going to do that. We're going to take our BMP-3 and he's going to move. Actually, he probably shouldn't even be here because this is rough, which technically vehicles can't be him. So that's a bad deployment on my part. But since we started it that way, we'll just play it. So he's going to move into the light woods here because all the woods on this map for this scenario are light woods. Light woods for a tracked vehicle is 2 movement. So he's got a movement factor of 6. So he can go here and then here, and that would be 4 movement. And do we want to fire with our Conquerors? Actually, we cannot. So we would have to fire with our primary firepower, which we're not going to do because it's not really worth it. So it would be a 4. Doesn't match, so we would need 2 hits. It's 4 minus 4. That's specialized armor. It's just not. It's not going to work. So, yeah, he's just going to move there and stop. And then our other 695th. Here's what we should do. We should take this guy and move, and the Predator gets an action as well from before. Forgot to do that as well. All right, so he's going to move here. That's 1. And then if we moved on to the rough for an infantry costs 2. So he can do that as well. And that would be his full movement though. I'm doing that mainly for the defensive benefit of being in the rough, which is a -2 dice quality. So from here, he can move and fire this Igla rocket. So the Igla rocket's got a firepower of, boy, that's hard to read. It's a 2. It's on the blue background, so it's hard to read. 2 and a range of 12. So he can fire at our Predator drone. So firepower of 2. Use the full movement, and when you use your full movement, you take what do you do? Yeah, you take a penalty. So you would take a -3 DQ, but he's only going to have 1 die because it's an attack of 2 and the armor on the Predator is a 1. So it's going to be 1 green die if we attack, and we might as well. And we get a hit. So you know what that's going to do? That's going to take the Predator out of play because he's going to start the next turn with an action, and I believe that means he's going to hit the road and RTB, basically. So that was well worth the action there for the Russians. And I didn't really get a whole lot out of my Predator drone. I probably should have tried to take out the Armada or something like that. But I felt like it was important to try to stick these guys a little bit. Now, the stacking limit's 2. So really what's going to happen is, you can shuffle 1 through at a time. So it's going to slow them down a little bit and prevent, obviously, one of them won't be able to move. But yeah, so they do have 4 units down here, and as I mentioned earlier, they just have to get up here to K6 to reach safety, basically. So I think that's all I'm going to do for the 696th. Again, we're going to kind of hang out and sort of set up like a pseudo ambush, even though nobody's hidden, for when the Israelis try to chase down these Hezbollah units. So that will end activation number 6, and I'll do one more, and then we're going to take a break, and I'll break this up and do part 2 later. And we get our next Russian here, and this is Serduyakov. So Serduyakov is basically armor. They've got the Armada, they've got the BMP. What is this? I can't read it from down there. They've got this guy right here, BMPT. Right, so yeah, he was here. All right, so let's take our Armada since we can. Now he can't obviously do the rough, but he could go here for 1, and then here for 2, and then here for into the light woods is 2, so that would be 4. And we're not going to fire. I'm just going to stick an action under there, and that will be all I'm going to do with this unit. Actually, no, we'll move this guy up as well, and he will take an action as well. And that will end Serduyakov. That is the 7th. We have 4 chits left, it looks like to me. Oh, we do have an additional action from the one Israeli. The SAR actually gets 2. That's our armor. So we might have some armor on armor action here in a moment, depending on who pulls the next chit. So, but for now, as I said, I'm going to wrap up this. This will be part 1. We'll pick it up here with part 2 pretty soon. But in the meantime, I just want to shut this down because it's getting really long, and I don't like to go over an hour if I can avoid it. And this is really close. So we will take a break here. We're going to stop after 7 activations. I'm going to try my best to get through the rest of it in a part 2. Move things along a little faster because I won't have to explain stuff about how the Predator drone works and all kinds of stuff like that. It's going to mostly be combat, hopefully be fast and furious, and we get through the 30 activations, or the Russians manage to exit or the Hezbollah units manage to get off the map. So we will pick this up. For now, I'm going to sign off. As always, my name's Joe. I'm sure you know that by now. This is Hexed Encountered. And thanks for watching. Please consider liking, sharing, and or subscribing. That would be much appreciated as always. And until next time, happy gaming.